I had just shut the door when I realized my purse felt strangely light. My heart skipped a beat as my hand searched frantically through every pocket. No car keys. I let out a frustrated hiss. Today was Mom's birthday lunch and I only had about 15 minutes to get to the restaurant. I remembered swapping out my earrings in the bedroom earlier. Maybe I'd left the keys on the nightstand. I slipped off my shoes, my bare feet meeting the icy hardwood floor. The suburban house outside Boston usually felt warm in the afternoons, but today the air was different. Thick, suffocating, like something unseen was pressing down on me. I thought of calling out to my husband, but my voice caught in my throat. A strange unease rose inside me as if something was waiting upstairs. The staircase creaked lightly under my steps, and the closer I came to the end of the hallway, the clearer the faint sounds became. The bedroom door was ajar. Through the crack I saw a shadow move. My chest tightened. Maybe Daniel was home earlier than usual. Maybe this was the chance we needed to talk honestly, to bridge the distance that had stretched between us for months. But then his voice froze me in place. Daniel's tone, low, intimate, the way he hadn't spoken to me in so long. And then came another voice, one that made my blood run cold. Emily. My younger sister, just a year behind me. I pressed my back to the wall, heart pounding wildly. Through the narrow opening, the sight hit me like a blade. Daniel lay on our bed, his shirt hanging open. Next to him, Emily's brown hair spilled across the pillow, my pillow from last night. Ruby has always been so gullible, Daniel murmured, tracing circles along Emily's arm. Emily's laugh cut sharp, brittle, like glass shattering. She believes every excuse you make up. Believes you're working late. Believes you need space to think about the marriage. She's always been that way, so easy to manipulate. My knees buckled, dropping me to the floor. Air clogged in my lungs. Each word landed like a hammer blow. I dug my fingers into the wall, holding back the sob clawing its way up my throat. Daniel kept speaking, his voice steady, almost cruel. She never questions a thing. Just like when we were kids, when she thought your mom loved both of you equally. That's right, Emily replied, her eyes glinting with triumph. She never knew that even back then Mom had already chosen me. She never really wanted her at all. A deafening ring filled my ears, like the world itself was tearing apart. I bit my lip until I tasted blood, my hand trembling over my mouth to silence the cry rising within me. Every word was not only betrayal of love but desecration of my childhood. I wanted to burst in, to scream, but my legs were locked. Inside me everything collapsed. The man I had trusted with my life, and the sister I believed to be bound by blood, were tangled in my sheets, mocking my innocence as if it were nothing more than a joke. The room seemed to spin, but I couldn't look away from that sliver of space between the door and the frame. My whole body trembled, rage and heartbreak tearing me apart in equal measure. I sat slumped on the cold wooden floor, my back pressed against the wall, heart pounding wildly. I thought I had already heard the worst pain of my life, but Emily's next words cut the air from my lungs. Don't worry, my sister whispered, her voice sweet but sharp as a knife. Ruby has no idea about the will. He thinks Dad left everything to Mom. But in reality, half of the estate should have been hers. The blood in my veins froze. Well, my father had passed 5 years ago. I remembered so clearly the day of the reading when my mother, Margaret, sternly declared that everything was left to her. Back then I bowed my head and accepted it. And now, my sister had just dropped a devastating secret. Daniel chuckled softly, his hand sliding into Emily's hair. And thanks to that we get to enjoy everything, don't we? It's laughable that Ruby's been living naive all these years, never knowing she was entitled to part of the inheritance. I bit down on my hand to stifle the sob that clawed up my throat. Every word landed like a verdict. Not only had they betrayed my love, but they had stolen my rights and dignity too. Emily lowered her voice, whispering, Mom paid off the lawyer to cover it up. Ruby doesn't need to know, she was never important. Her life was only meant to be a shadow behind me. A chill ran down my spine. Memories rushed back. The holidays when Mom forgot me, when Emily always got the best presents while I was handed scraps. I had told myself Mom was too busy, or maybe love wasn't always evenly shared. But now the pieces snapped together into a painfully clear picture. I had never truly mattered. I rose slowly, inching away from the door, terrified even a creak would expose me. My head spun, ears ringing, but beneath it all a fierce resolve took shape. I had to uncover the truth. That evening, I faked a headache to skip Mom's birthday dinner. I drove aimlessly around Boston until I ended up at the cemetery where Dad rested. On the gravestone etched with the words George Miller, a devoted father, a loving husband, I whispered, Dad, did you really leave something for me? Why didn't I ever know? In the cold wind, it was as if I heard his voice urging me to seek the answer. The next day I went straight to my mother's old house. Margaret was preparing lunch, her silver hair pulled back neatly, her face still carrying that familiar chilling sternness at nearly 70. She glanced up at me, eyes sharp. Ruby, you came without telling me? Why didn't you come to my birthday dinner yesterday? I sat at the table, forcing my voice to remain steady. I have something to ask. Do you still have pictures of me as a baby? From the hospital when I was born. For a split second, her expression faltered. The hand holding her coffee cup trembled. Why are you asking that? I just want to know. For the future when I have children. I want to understand our family history. I lied, but inside I was burning. She slammed the cup down, coffee splashing over the rim. That's unnecessary. You should focus on your marriage instead of digging up the past. The past. I met her gaze head on. What do you mean by that? I only want to know what Dad truly left for me. The air grew heavy. Her face went pale, then stiffened again. Who told you that? I stayed silent, but my eyes gave her the answer. Margaret turned away, her voice shrinking. Don't look any further, Ruby. Some truths only bring pain. My chest tightened. That half-confession was as clear as any admission. Daniel and Emily hadn't lied. My father really had left me a share, and my mother with my sister had hidden it. I walked out of that familiar kitchen, a storm raging in my heart. After years of living under layers of deceit, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. I swore I would find the real will. And one day soon, every single one of them would pay for what they had concealed. I thought I had already hit rock bottom when I heard Emily and Daniel laughing about the will, but then my sister's next words shattered my world. You really think Ruby knows she isn't actually Margaret's biological daughter? She's always been an outsider in this family. If she ever found out the truth, she'd lose her mind. The air around me froze. I clung to the stair railing to keep from collapsing. Every cell in my body screamed in denial, but Emily's steady tone cut through me like a blade. Daniel lowered his voice as if afraid of the weight of what she'd said. Are you sure? I've never heard Margaret mention anything like that. Emily smirked. I'm sure. Mom told me a long time ago. Ruby isn't her child. She only raised her because she had her reasons. To us, Ruby is nothing. My vision blurred, cold sweat tracing down my spine. I had doubted my mother's love before, but never imagined I wasn't her blood. Memories flooded back. Mom's pride-filled gaze always on Emily, the way she sided with her in every argument no matter who was right. Was this the explanation all along? I stumbled down the stairs, forcing myself out of the house without a sound. The Boston sky was gray that day, but it was nothing compared to the weight in my chest. I sat in my car for hours, frozen. Part of me wanted to believe Emily had made it up to humiliate me, but Mom's reaction when I asked about the past earlier left me unable to console myself. That night, sleep never came. I dug through old photo albums, every family picture slicing deeper. In most of them, I stood off to the side, awkward and forgotten. Emily was always in the center, wrapped in Mom's arms, her gaze full of love. Studying the photos closer, I realized I didn't share a single feature with Margaret. The next morning, I chose to face the truth. I drove to my mother's house again. She was watering the garden, calm as ever. But I was no longer the obedient daughter. Mom, I said, my voice trembling but firm, I need you to tell me the truth. Am I really your daughter? Margaret jerked, the watering can crashing onto the pavement, water splashing everywhere. She turned away, but not fast enough to hide the flash of panic across her face. Ruby, who told you that nonsense? Of course you're my daughter. For the first time in my life, I refused to look away. I heard it from Emily. And your reaction before. I can't ignore it anymore. Please, just tell me the truth. Her hands tightened, silence stretching unbearably. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders sagging. You weren't supposed to know this. But yes, Ruby. You're not my biological child. My heart clenched. Even bracing myself hadn't prepared me for the blow of hearing it from her own mouth. Then, who am I? My voice cracked. She avoided my eyes, speaking so softly it was almost a whisper. Your father was married before me. His first wife died when you were very little. He couldn't bear the loss and I stepped in caring for him and for you. That's how we became a family. I stood frozen. My entire life had been a carefully built lie. Believing Emily was my sister by blood, believing Margaret was my mother. In truth, I had only been the child that came along with my father's second marriage. I wanted to demand why they had hidden it, why they had painted such a false picture for decades. But my throat locked, no words could come. Margaret stepped closer, her hand trembling as it touched my shoulder. I'm sorry, but the past is the past. You're still my daughter. That doesn't change. I pulled away. In that instant I saw it clearly. She wasn't apologizing for hiding the will, nor for letting Emily and Daniel betray me. She only regretted that the truth had finally come out. I walked out of the garden, the noon sun glaring down on my face, blazing yet cold. For the first time in my life I felt utterly alone. I left my mother's house with my mind in chaos. Margaret's words from yesterday kept echoing in my head. You are not my biological daughter. I barely slept all night, childhood memories flooding back, each one suddenly proof that I had always been an outsider in my own family. The next morning I returned, this time without hesitation. The heavy oak door creaked open. Margaret stood there, her silver hair disheveled, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Ruby, why are you here again? I told you everything yesterday. I stepped inside, shut the door firmly behind me and said with certainty, you didn't tell me everything. I want to know it all. Who is my real mother? Why did you and Emily always treat me as the extra? I deserve the truth. She stayed silent for a long while, then exhaled heavily as though surrendering the mask she had worn for decades. Fine. You want to hear it? I'll tell you. But be prepared. We sat in the living room on the old sofa where I once did my homework as a child. Sunlight filtered through the window, casting our shadows on the wall, distorted and cold. Margaret began slowly. Your father, George, had a wife before me. Her name was Isabella, she was Mexican. They were in love when they were young and before long you were born. But when you were only 6 months old, Isabella died in a car accident. My chest tightened. The name Isabella felt both foreign and strangely familiar. Your father was devastated, Margaret continued. He was my boss at the time. I stayed by his side, helped him, and eventually we became a family. When I gave birth to Emily, to avoid gossip, your father decided it was easier to tell everyone you two were twins. It was simpler and it spared you from pity. I shot to my feet, the floor beneath me trembling. So all these years you forced me to live inside a lie? I believed Emily and I were twins. I believed you were the one who gave birth to me. And it was all just a story you scripted. Margaret bowed her head, her voice breaking. I know it was wrong, but your father begged me. He was afraid the harsh truth would hurt you. I laughed bitterly, the sound cutting through the room. Hurt me? What could be worse than knowing my whole childhood was a fabrication? That you and Emily saw me as nothing but a burden under this roof. Her eyes welled with tears, her hands trembling on the armrest. Ruby, you're still my daughter. I raised you, taught you, cared for you. No. I cut her off, fire blazing in my eyes. You raised a shadow. The real love, you gave it all to Emily. Don't call it care, call it what it was, a cover for your guilt. Silence weighed heavy. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my chest. Finally, Margaret whispered, believe it or not, your father loved you deeply. He wanted to leave you half of everything. But I couldn't. I chose Emily. I thought you were stronger and she was weaker. The words pierced me like the final blade. I turned away, tears spilling but no longer soft, only sharpened by resolve. If they had stolen my identity, my inheritance, my childhood, then I would take it all back. I stepped closer to Margaret, meeting the eyes that had avoided mine for so long. I will find proof. I will show the world that Dad truly left me my share. I no longer believe a word you say. Margaret trembled, shaking her head. Ruby, don't do this. You don't understand everything. Some secrets should stay buried forever. I stepped back, voice steady, unwavering. The truth is still the truth no matter how long you hide it. You and Emily have lied to me enough. Now it's my turn to uncover everything. Leaving the house, my breath came fast, but my steps were solid. On the quiet suburban street, the sky seemed higher, yet colder than ever. And in my mind, only one thought remained. Find the will, find the letters, uncover every secret they tried to bury. That night, I drove aimlessly through Boston, my mind spinning with Margaret's confession. I didn't want to hear another excuse. If the truth existed, it had to be in what my father left behind, not in the mouths of those who had turned my life into a chain of lies. The old house, the one my father once owned and where Margaret still lived, suddenly felt like a vault of secrets. I returned at dusk. She was in the bedroom, and under the pretense of collecting old belongings, I slipped quickly into the library, the room my father had always kept locked. Dark wooden shelves stretched to the ceiling, the air still thick with the scent of old paper and stale tobacco. I ran my hand along the shelves, faint memories rising. As a child, I remembered seeing him pause at the far right shelf, tapping his fingers as if it were a habit. The thought struck me and I began pulling books one by one. Then, tucked between thick law volumes, a gap revealed itself. I braced my weight and shifted the section slightly. Faint click echoed. Behind it, a small steel door appeared. A safe. My hands trembled. I spun the dial. The first 3 tries failed, but when I entered his birthday, the date I'd never forgotten, the lock snapped open with a dry clunk. The safe swung wide. Inside lay a stack of yellow envelopes, a bundle of files held with a rubber band and a worn leather notebook. My heart raced as I pulled everything out. The first file, a birth certificate. My breath caught at the line printed clearly. Mother's name, Isabella Ramirez. Not Margaret. Each letter cut deep, and below it my father's signature confirmed it. Doubt vanished. This was the truth. The next envelope held the will. His familiar handwriting stood out, steady and clear. I leave my entire estate equally to my 2 daughters. Ruby Miller, child of Isabella Ramirez, and Emily Miller, child of Margaret. I dropped the paper as tears welled up. My father had never abandoned me. He had wanted fairness, had wanted to protect us both. It wasn't him who betrayed me, it was those still alive who had buried his wishes. In the leather notebook, I found carefully written letters, each beginning with, "To my dearest Ruby." I read, my hands shaking, throat tight. "One day you will face the truth. I regret not having the courage to tell you when you were small. But remember this, Isabella, your mother, loved you more than anything. She held you in her arms until her last breath. I promised to tell you when you grew up, but I was weak and your stepmother stopped me. If you are reading this now, know that you were always loved. You are half of the legacy your mother and I cherished." Tears dripped onto the page. All my life I had longed for confirmation, and here it was. My father had not forgotten me, had not seen me as a burden. He had left behind the proof. Others had buried it so I would remain in the dark. At the bottom of the safe was a small ring of keys and another letter, addressed to the family lawyer. In it, my father explicitly wrote that Ruby must receive her inheritance, and if anyone attempted to block it, the evidence would be stored in this very safe. I sank onto the wooden floor, clutching the letters to my chest. Amid the heartbreak, another feeling surged, strength. I was no longer the girl deceived and silenced. I had the evidence, I had the truth, and I would not let them trample my father's wishes or my mother's memory any longer. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Margaret was approaching. I shoved the documents into my bag, my pulse racing. The door creaked open and she poked her head in. "Ruby, are you still in here?" I drew a deep breath, meeting her eyes head-on for the first time. "Yes, I'm still here. And you know what? I found what I needed." Her face drained of color, her lips trembling. You looked." I didn't answer. I simply walked past her, carrying with me the truth they had tried so hard to bury. I walked out of that house with my bag heavy with files and letters. Every step I took felt like pounding a new vow into the ground. I would not stay silent anymore. But I knew papers alone weren't enough. Margaret and Emily were too clever, and Daniel had played the role of a devoted husband so well he'd fooled me for years. If I wanted to expose them, I needed living proof, something undeniable. The first person I thought of was Carmen, my best friend from college, now a legal advisor at a nonprofit in downtown Boston. I called her that very night. Her voice filled with concern as I choked through the story. "Ruby, calm down. Come to my office tomorrow. We'll make a plan." But promise me, you can't let them know what you've got. The next morning I sat in a cafe near City Hall, clutching my bag like a lifeline. Carmen walked in, her short black hair sharp against the light, her eyes both fierce and compassionate. She slid into the seat and whispered, "Show me." I opened the bag and laid out the birth certificate, the will, the letters. Carmen read carefully, her face tightening with every page. "Ruby, this is gold," she said at last. "But if you want to take them to court, you need proof they knowingly covered it up. And the fastest way is to make them admit it themselves." I frowned. "You mean a trap?" Carmen nodded. "Exactly. We record them. Once their own voices confess, no lawyer can twist the truth." I swallowed hard. The thought of facing them made my skin crawl, but the image of Daniel and Emily tangled on my bed burned away the hesitation. I nodded. "Fine. Let's do it." That afternoon, Carmen handed me a small recorder, easy to hide in a photo frame or a vase. "All you need is to push in the right places. Don't be obvious. Let them think you're still weak, still gullible. When they drop their guard, the truth will spill out." The plan was set. I'd invite Margaret and Emily to dinner, pretending I wanted to make peace. Daniel would almost certainly come, and then all three would sit across from me. Carmen would wait in the next room to ensure the device worked and to step in if things got dangerous. The night came sooner than I expected. I set the table neatly, candles lit, wine poured, like a family gathering. The recorder lay hidden behind my wedding photo, the warm light masking any trace of it. When the door opened, Margaret walked in cautiously, Emily close at her side, and Daniel slipped an arm around me, feigning affection. "Ruby, I'm glad you're finally opening up," he said. I forced a thin smile. "I just want peace in this family. Sit, let's talk." We picked at the food in silence, tension thick as smoke. I set my glass down, turning to Margaret. "Mom, I was too harsh the other day. I'm sorry. Maybe I've been overthinking. Maybe Dad only wanted things simple." Her eyes flickered nervously. Emily jumped in. "Exactly. You're always imagining things. Like the will, there's nothing to it." I let hesitation creep into my voice. "But I remember Dad writing some letters. They felt different." Daniel cut in quickly, his tone firm. "Ruby, you're being paranoid again. I've told you it's all in your head." Margaret sighed heavily. "Ruby, you've always been sensitive, I understand. But what you believe, your father never intended to split the estate. He wanted everything for me and Emily." Emily snorted, her voice laced with venom. "That's right. Because you were never really Mom's blood. You've always been the burden Dad brought along. Without us, you'd have never had a place in this house." The room froze. My fists clenched under the table, though my face stayed calm. Daniel shot her a warning look. "Emily, you didn't have to say it outright." "Why not?" Emily snapped. "It's the truth. Daniel, you know it. You've heard Mom say it countless times. Ruby has no claim at all." Margaret panicked. "Enough, Emily." But her trembling voice only made the confession sharper. I lifted my head, a cold smile on my lips. "So, at last you admit it." Daniel stiffened. "What are you talking about?" I stood, reached for the photo frame on the shelf, and pulled out the recorder gleaming in my hand. "Every word you just said is on here. The affair. The hidden will. The lies that turned me into a puppet in this family." Emily's face drained of color, her wine glass slipping and shattering on the table. Margaret's mouth opened but no sound came. Daniel's voice cracked, desperate. "Ruby, you're insane. You can't use that." I cut him off, my voice cold as ice. "I can. And I will. This is only the beginning." My gaze swept across their faces, each one paling in shock. In the flicker of candlelight and the scent of wine, I knew the knife had turned. For the first time, the power was mine. I returned to the attic of the old suburban house, where boxes of my father's and Isabella's belongings still lay untouched. Among the dusty stacks sat a wooden chest, its lock rusted with age. The small key I had taken from the safe earlier fit perfectly. When the lid creaked open, the scent of damp paper and old fabric rose up, pulling me into faint memories of the mother I had never truly known. Inside were a few worn dresses, a floral embroidered shawl, and letters tied with a ribbon. My hands shook as I untied it. On the first envelope, in delicate handwriting, it read, "To Ruby, if one day you find this." I sank onto the floor, the light from a small window spilling across the yellowed paper. My mother had written, "If you are reading this, I am likely gone. Do not believe them when they say I died of illness. I am certain your father wanted me out of the way. He had financial secrets, hidden transfers." When I confronted him, his rage was terrifying. And the worst part, Margaret knew, but she chose silence. She said things had to stay stable, that divorce would ruin your father's reputation. "Ruby, if I cannot protect myself, you must protect the truth." I read the letter again and again, my heart crushed in a vice. My eyes burned, but no tears came. This was no longer grief. It was fury. Another envelope, dated only weeks before her death, made my throat tighten. "My dear child, I am afraid every day. Your father asks constantly about insurance, about inheritance. I fear he may be capable of the unthinkable. If I should die suddenly, do not believe what they tell you. Find the truth, Ruby." Pieces fell into place. Margaret's desperate attempts to stop me from digging into the past, my father's evasions whenever Isabella's name came up, Emily's slips about insurance. My mother's death had not been an accident. I called Carmen and told her to come at once. When she arrived and saw the letters spread out across the floor, she froze, shaking her head. "Ruby, these are Isabella's own words. If we bring this forward, it's enough for the police to reopen the case." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A strange number, but the voice on the other end was unmistakably Margaret's. "Ruby, you're going too far. There are things you're not meant to know. Stop before it's too late." I gripped the letter, forcing my voice steady. "You knew Isabella's death wasn't natural. You chose silence, didn't you?" A deadly pause. Then Margaret's voice quivered. "You don't understand. Your father was too powerful, too dangerous. If I had spoken, neither of us would have been safe." My breath caught, not at her confession but at her cowardice, her defensive silence through fear. "So you were too afraid to protect me, too afraid to protect Isabella's truth? I'm not that child anymore. I will see this through." I ended the call, my pulse racing. Carmen met my gaze and nodded firmly. "It's time for lawyers and police. But first, we back up everything. Don't give them a chance to destroy the evidence." That night, in a small Boston hotel room, I laid out every letter and document on the desk. The warm lamplight cast Isabella's words into sharp relief, as if her presence lingered, whispering beside me. I pressed my hand against the silver pendant from the chest, engraved with the letter I, and whispered, "I promise, Mother. The truth will not die with you. I'll make sure they all pay the price." When Carmen officially submitted Isabella's letters and the shadowy financial records to attorney Aaron Cho, the case was quickly transferred to the Suffolk County District Attorney's office. Not long after, the Boston police stepped in. What I once thought was a private battle had turned into a real criminal investigation. Detective Nora Bennett, the lead investigator, came to meet me. She reassured me, "Ruby, you're not alone anymore. We're going to dig up everything that's been buried." Within weeks, the preliminary findings shook my entire family. Forensic reports confirmed that Isabella's car brakes had been deliberately tampered with. Insurance files revealed Margaret had claimed irregular payouts in her name. Meanwhile, the financial documents from the safe proved Daniel and Emily had colluded to steal part of the inheritance, even forging my signature in several past transactions. Police stormed Margaret's suburban house to arrest her. The nearly 70-year-old woman, once so composed, trembled as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. She screamed, "I didn't kill anyone. I only did what I had to protect the family." But no one believed her anymore. Years of complicit silence had finally become her sentence. Daniel and Emily were arrested the same day. Police seized their computers and ledgers, packed with proof of fraud and inheritance schemes. I'll never forget Emily's eyes as they took her away, wild with panic and hatred, as if I had destroyed everything. Daniel only kept his head down, no longer able to play the role of the model husband. The trial came 3 months later. I sat in the front row, gripping Carmen's hand. The prosecutor laid out piece after piece of evidence. Isabella's letters, the brake inspection report, the insurance contracts, and the recordings of Margaret, Daniel, and Emily confessing in their own words. The courtroom fell silent when Emily's cold laughter rang out. Ruby never had any rights at all. The judge delivered the verdict in suffocating silence. Margaret was convicted of conspiring to conceal homicide and insurance fraud, sentenced to years in prison. Daniel and Emily were found guilty of financial fraud, inheritance deception, and perjury. Those who had once sneered at me now stood before justice with no escape. I remember the moment my name rang through the ruling. Ruby Miller is the rightful heir to half of the estate of the late Robert Miller, according to his original will. My whole body trembled, not from greed, but from the overwhelming relief that truth and justice had finally aligned. The press spread the story quickly. The tale of a woman betrayed by her own family, of Isabella's hidden death, echoed throughout Boston. I had never wanted to be in the spotlight, but deep inside I knew my mother, Isabella, had finally been vindicated. That afternoon after court, I went alone to the cemetery. Kneeling before her weathered headstone, I laid down the silver pendant engraved with an eye. Tears streamed down my face, but this time they weren't bitter, they were freeing. I whispered, "Mother, the truth is out. I've done what you asked in your letters." I rose as the wind swept through the maple trees. The Boston sky stretched bright and clear. After everything, I had reclaimed not only the inheritance that was rightfully mine, but more importantly, the truth and the dignity that had been denied me for so many years. Early autumn in Boston was crisp and cool. Red maple leaves blanketed the grounds of Mount Auburn Cemetery, where I chose to hold a memorial for Isabella Ramirez, the mother I had only truly come to know through letters and harsh truths uncovered after so many years. After the trial, I knew her story couldn't end in a courtroom. Isabella deserved a day where her name was spoken openly, honored as a real woman of flesh and blood, not hidden behind the label of the first wife in the Miller family. I stood on a small platform before her headstone, holding a black and white photograph of her. Close friends, Carmen, attorney Aaron, and a few people who had once known my mother gathered around. My voice was steady, though my throat tightened. For years, my mother's death was called an accident. But the truth has come to light. She was the victim of a scheme and of silence. Today we gather not just to mourn, but to affirm that justice may be delayed, but it does not disappear. Isabella Ramirez, Mother, I love you. And I will live a life you can be proud of. Silence followed, broken only by the wind carrying dry leaves in circles. I laid a white wreath on her grave and felt a peace in my heart I had never known. After that day I began a new journey. I chose not to spend my inheritance on comfort, but to establish the Isabella Foundation, a nonprofit supporting women who had suffered abuse and betrayal within their families. I understood their pain because I had lived it myself. The foundation began in Boston, then expanded across several states, offering emergency shelters, legal counseling, and workshops to help women rebuild their independence. At the same time, I wrote my first book, Whispers in the Chest. In it, I told the story of uncovering the truth about Isabella, of being betrayed by my own family, and of finding the strength to rise. The book quickly drew attention not because of tragedy but because of its message. The truth may be buried, but it will always find its way to the surface. In those busy months, I met Miguel Alvarez, a 38-year-old architect, the son of one of my mother's old friends. He helped me redesign the first Isabella Foundation Center in South Boston. At first, we were only colleagues. Miguel was patient, his calm gaze like a still lake, the perfect contrast to the chaos I had endured. Slowly, I realized that with him, my heart no longer clenched with pain. One late afternoon, as the project neared completion, Miguel led me to the balcony on the third floor, overlooking the Charles River glowing under the sunset. He said, "Ruby, you've been through so much. But from now on, you deserve to live for yourself, not in anyone else's shadow." I didn't answer right away. I just took his hand, and for the first time I felt truly safe. That November, the Isabella Foundation officially launched. Media outlets covered the story, but it was no longer about Ruby Miller, the betrayed woman. It was about Ruby Miller, who rose to become a voice for hundreds of other women. When I took the stage, I didn't introduce myself as the daughter of Robert and Margaret Miller. Instead, I said with confidence, "I am Ruby, daughter of Isabella Ramirez. On paper, my name may carry Miller, but in my heart, I carry the light and love of my mother." The hall erupted in applause. At that moment, I knew I had claimed my true identity. A new life had opened. From lonely nights crying in hotel rooms, from days of being cast out by my own family, I had stepped into the light. I had a mission, loyal friends, a growing love with Miguel, and above all, one priceless certainty: Isabella somewhere was smiling and whispering, "You did it, Ruby." Ruby's story is not only a family tragedy, but also a journey of reclaiming justice and rediscovering herself. From a woman betrayed, deceived, and stripped of her rightful inheritance, she found the courage to stand tall, expose the crimes, clear her mother Isabella's name, and restore her own dignity. Today, Ruby has chosen a new path, creating a foundation to support women, writing a book to share her life story, and finding happiness with Miguel. From the shadows, she stepped into the light, becoming a symbol of strength and resilience. What do you think about Ruby's journey and the secrets in her family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel to continue with us through more powerful and meaningful family stories.